Salutations friends, welcome back to my channel. Today we're responding to some comments and answering some questions. So let's get into the video. As always, my name is Kristin. Hello and hi. If you're unfamiliar with these videos, every few weeks, usually 2 to 3 weeks, I like to go through older comments and respond and continue discussions, questions, and debates on previous comments left in some of my older videos. And today we have some really good ones. I don't think this video is going to be too spicy or too long, but as always, if I reference any videos, I will link them below, and I can only speak to myself when it comes down to other content creators or things like that. So any opinions expressed are completely my own. The first comment I'm really excited to talk about because this is obviously something that is brought up a lot in fragrance collecting generally, and this is a great comment to have. I will say that before I go into this comment, I don't have much of any experience, but I do have a bit of experience in regards to what they asked. So anyway, when I get into the comment, you guys will get it. So this comes from D, and their comment is, and this is on my fragrance collection FAQ video, and their comment is, hey there, I know you talked about how you store your fragrances to make sure they don't go bad as quickly, but I was wondering if you had any older fragrances in your collection that have gone bad. And also just generally about the age of your fragrances. I was wondering because it seems like older batches from different brands I sometimes see come up in different secondhand circles, both opened and unopened, and I was wondering how getting those older perfumes might affect their lifespan in a collection or their scent, besides any reformulations, of course. So what I mean by is I do not have much of any experience when it comes down to vintage fragrance collecting. I do own some vintage fragrances and I do have a large collection, and I have worked with perfume and kind of understand how brands decide to label their fragrances lifespan. But I am not a vintage fragrance collector, authority, or have any knowledge. So anybody out there who has more or any experience with vintage fragrances, if I say anything incorrect or you want to add or expand on what I say, comment section, because I think this is a great, fantastic conversation to have. So currently I'm sitting on 990 bottles. I say over the course of the last 10 years, I've probably swapped, decluttered, and sold an additional 150. The reason why I'm saying this number, so let's just round it up to 1,200. Out of 1,200 fragrances, over the course of me collecting fragrances for, I would say, over 20 years, I've only had to throw away 3 bottles of perfume because they went bad. Not because they expired, in regards to best by date, but because they were unwearable in regards to the liquid inside the bottle. Those 3 were Sugar Cookie from Demeter, an original bottle of Lolita Lempicka I had, and my beloved Honey Gentle Water from L'Occitane. That one literally looked like mayonnaise. It developed these weird protein-like chunks in it. Generally, from what I know, when fragrances get older, the top notes kind of disappear, and depending on the formula, the house, the quality of ingredients, and the composition, they don't really age in a way that's kind of like they rot or they go rancid, but they kind of age in a way where they develop this kind of unique characteristics of just kind of smelling, in some aspects a little bit more intense, a little bit softer in some areas. Some of the top notes disappear. Some of the notes might get a little bit sharper, and the composition will change based on all of that. So from what I've smelled with my limited experience of understanding vintage fragrances, I've noticed that the types of scents that tend to smell better as vintages are these more kind of complex, very classic, very beautifully nuanced, kind of ambery, woody, fresh, spicy fragrances, and chypres and things like that, rather than fresh, minimalistic scents. Because as these compositions start to tweak and change and get a little bit stronger and lighter and rounder in some areas, and you lose some of the top notes that might help balance the dry down, With these like more minimalistic fragrances, balance is so important because you have less to work with. And with these beautifully already in their original formulation, gorgeous, complex compositions, they kind of develop and age and mature in a way they're just like gorgeous and unique and something that people just really just absolutely voraciously just want to wear and smell like, because there's something about them that's just beautiful. And not everybody likes those vintage classic compositions, especially a vintage perfume. But I've noticed that on the skin, there's something timeless and just perfect about vintage fragrances. I only own a few, but I do love them. There's something about them that I just find to be perfect. But I don't have experience with vintage fragrances to be able to completely talk about the best vintages, the best way to look for them, and things like that. That's just based on my limited knowledge. Now, not every fragrance is going to age better. Not every house is going to age better. And so for the most part, when you do add fragrances to your collection, obviously this is a do as I say, not as I do, be responsible and mindful with your collection in regards to the amount of fragrances you add to your collection, especially if you're worried about fragrances going bad and you having to get rid of something because it's unwearable. But for the most part, the shelf life that you see on a fragrance is more to do with that fragrance remaining a like little soldier. Hold on, let me grab a bottle. I'll kind of tell you what I mean. This is Chanel L'Eau. This is a great example. I originally had a bottle of this before and I swapped it for something and I missed it and I rebought it. I love this bottle. Normally when I first purchased this bottle in store brand new, this is literally like crystal clear. I don't know if you guys can see, but you see how it has like a slight tint to it? That would be unacceptable if you were to purchase this, say, from like Macy's or Dillard's or from Ulta. It would consider that this fragrance went bad. Now, I've had this specific bottle in my collection, I'd say, for about 2 years, maybe a little over 2 years, maybe 2.5 years. The lifespan that this bottle says, it doesn't say on here, but generally I would assume they have maybe a 24 month. You know, you see that little kind of tub and it says 24 months on the bottom. What they mean by that is that this liquid should smell exactly like every other box next to it. But also this fluid should be crystal clear. I think holding it up to there. Yeah, see that? How it's like white and then it's got kind of like that little bit of a tan tint. That tan tint is just something that happens with this fragrance. It smells the same. This is gorgeous. This is like one of the most successful flankers in my opinion. I've talked about this. I love this fragrance. But that tan tint already means, according to Chanel's standards of selling this bottle full retail priced with kind of licensed resellers, so like Macy's or like Chanel boutiques, this is already bad. So these would be sent back to, these would be pulled from the shelf, this batch would be pulled from the shelf, and this would be sent to either be destroyed or resold to gray market, however Chanel decides to do what Chanel decides to do. But it smells the same. So when you see this fragrance has a shelf life of 2 years, in a lot of cases, specifically with designer fragrances, it's not that the fragrances are going to instantly kind of be like milk or maybe like a product, you know, like that just like and instantly like the day after it's bad. You can't wear it anymore. It's not a little soldier anymore. It doesn't look like clear and perfect. There's something about it that doesn't meet the rigid standards of looking like a little soldier, looking like a little clone or copy. And so the lifespan, the best buy date on beauty items, some of them do have a potency. So with skincare items, that could be a potency for ingredients. So like a skincare item, like say maybe a moisturizer, you know, 24 months after using this, you might not want to put it on your skin because maybe that's when the formula starts to break down and separate. But with fragrances, it's a little bit different. Some houses actually design their fragrances to age. I know House of Matriarch, I know Christy designs her fragrances to age beautifully. And some houses do have these best by dates because of presentation and it being like a little soldier. So when it comes down to fragrance going bad, it's completely, do you smell it? Does it smell like how, does it smell good? Do you put it on your skin? Do you have a reaction? That's really ultimately what it is. Because if it smells good to you and you put it on your skin and you don't have a reaction, then I think personally, and again, if people out there who have more experience with vintage fragrances, please tell me, then your fragrance isn't bad. The Lolita Lampica and the Sugar Cookie from Demeter, those just smelled like rubbing alcohol for hours on my skin. And I was like, okay, these are no good. And the Honey Gentle Water, those big chunks just were no good. And the thing is I had somebody who was going to sell me their bottle. They had a partial of Honey Gentle Water and I was going to buy it. And they hadn't opened it for a year and it had been in a box someplace safe. And they were a fragrance collector, so I knew that they kept everything safe. And theirs had chunks in it. So that was just the nature of that formula. So that's kind of like what I'm saying. But I have bottles of L'Occitane fragrances that are over 20 years old that were discontinued before Honey Gentle Water even came out. And those don't have chunks. So it was that specific formula of fragrance that develops chunks. So I think when you look at fragrances going bad, it's on an individual basis. But to protect your fragrances, to keep them in a cool, dry, dark environment with as little light as possible, that's the best way to go. But do understand that fragrances that are vintage, opened or unopened, I would just say if you are interested in kind of exploring vintage fragrances, if that's something that you wanted to start kind of exploring and adding to your collection, I am not the person to talk to. I do have very few vintage fragrances in my collection. I do enjoy them, but I have little to no knowledge. But at that point when you're purchasing a vintage fragrance, it is a whole different experience. It is a whole different world than purchasing like from a department store or a partial or gray market. So there are like different rules, different standards that you're looking for, different formulas. So I can't sit here and say this is what I would look for and this is what I would expect, because I have absolutely no experience and I don't want to lead you down the wrong path. But I will say that there is a real beauty and just something amazing about vintage formulas. And if that's something that you're interested in, definitely start learning because they are amazing. And the ones I have in my collection, I viciously love. A very common comment I've been getting for the past few weeks. This is from Anne Grace, and their comment is, have you done a fragrance collection room tour? Your collection is massive. Great video. Thank you. I think this is on my springtime floral fragrances for spring. So I am currently in the process of filming my room tour fragrance collection video. I tend to do these every few years. I will actually be doing this. I did a quick little kind of rough filming. There's two different ways I wanted to do it. One with my face, one without my face, and I kind of did two different kind of filmings to see which way I liked it. I like it without my face, because I want to talk about the perfume. So the past few collection videos I did, which are very cringy, but if you would like to see them, I will link them below. I kind of talked quickly or just share, but what I want to do is do a very extensive video where I kind of share kind of shelf by shelf and talk about one or two fragrances on each shelf, about why I add them to my collection, something about them that I enjoy, layering, blending, kind of go a little bit more in depth. I know a lot of people, when they do their room collections, they do them very quick, they're very fun, they're kind of bite-sized, they're great videos, especially if you kind of want the guilty pleasure of just seeing beautiful collections. And I know that they're great, and I've done those in the past, and I love watching those. But I think moving forward, because I am trying to be more mindful with my collection and more serious with my fragrance collection, I don't know if that makes any sense, I want to start kind of sharing my collecting as kind of its own character in my YouTube videos. And not just, hey, look at this bottle I added to my collection. Like, I am not a fragrance authority. I am not educated in perfume. I am coming at you as a fragrance collector and a consumer, and as kind of telling people and kind of reminding people that I'm not a perfumer. I think that as a collector, I want to start really sharing that side of my perfume journey with you guys, and not just talking about like, hey, this bottle smells pretty, like going more in depth with it. And so when I do share my perfume collection tour, I'm going to be doing a lot of talking. And so I thought it would be better if you guys saw the fragrances. So I don't know if you guys know, I bought my nails. So I'm gonna have to probably get some I'm gonna have to do something with these, because if you're gonna be looking at my hands for probably 2 hours, yeah, no, I'm not gonna make you guys do that. So I'm gonna have to find some press-on nails or something. So I'm gonna have to do that. This will probably also be the first official video where I change my editing slightly. So I've got some new equipment. I'm looking at something over there. I kind of shared it in my one of my videos. It's a, I think it was my fragrance FAQ. It's like a special slide. I think it's called Semantics. I'll link it below in the description box if you want to see some of the equipment that I've invested in for my channel. If you're like, oh, why? I'll link some of my equipment below that I've invested in. Some of it I've used before, some of it I haven't, but I have kind of been getting ready to switch to really taking this hobby seriously. And that's editing, and I'm doing this for me. I want to edit it and do it nicer, and that video will be the first time I do it. So I will be sharing my entire collection, probably not decants and samples, because I think that would make this video 10 hours long. But I will be doing a room tour focusing mostly on fragrances, but I will also kind of be sharing the entire kind of, remodel of my office. And I will also be talking to you guys in depth about how I collect. I kind of did that a lot in my FAQ video. That's actually why I did my FAQ video before, so I could reference that and not make that video too long with chit chat. It could be fragrance heavy, but I'm going to be taking you like shelf by shelf and talking to you guys about the fragrances I've added to my collection, why I've added specific fragrances to my collection, how I choose the fragrances I've added to my collection. I've kind of talked about it before. I have 2 different ways that I purchase scents. I purchase fragrances for YouTube, and then I purchase fragrances for my collection. And I've kind of talked about when I stopped doing YouTube, because at some point I'm going to stop doing YouTube. Everybody stops at some point. Whenever I stop doing YouTube, my YouTube fragrances will probably be the ones that I really love. I will be decanting because I purchase full bottles for YouTube rather than travel size or decants, so I can have the bottle to show. And then I'll swap or sell, because I won't be expanding past these cabinets. So my fragrance collection will never outgrow this room unless we move, and I hope we don't move, because oh my gosh, this was hell to move. But I will be talking to you guys not about adding fragrances to YouTube, but how I choose to add to my collection. Because I've talked about it before, like in the FAQ video, but I don't think I've actually like really talked about it like in depth, like on an individual fragrance level. So as I go like level to level, because some people are like, why don't you have this house? Why don't you have this fragrance? And I think as I go kind of level to level, I can really kind of talk about that. So I'll be sharing most every fragrance. And then I will be discussing too. So that video will probably be mid to late April. I'm working on it now. I got like the flashy part of the filming done. And then I need to sit down and do this part. And then once that's all done and compiled, I'll get it up for you guys. So I'm excited. But it has been taking a lot of work, but I am very excited for it. And I do want to share it in a way where if you want to watch like a 2 to 3 hour long video, on and like just listen to perfume. You'll listen to somebody talk about perfume for hours, and it'll be me. And I'm sorry, but also you're welcome. But that will be coming in April. And I think I'm going to be doing these types of videos like probably every 2 years. I was originally thinking I should do them every year, but I think that's way too much. I think every 2 to 3 years is a good amount of time to kind of share the collection, because I think that's a natural kind of seeing the collection grow, because every 2 to 3 years I kind of declutter and swap enough changes where it's not just additions, it's things leave and grow and change and taste change, and it's not just getting excited and buying things. It's an editing curation process, because there is curation to my collection. So if you wanted a room tour video, it will be sometime in April, and I promise it will be in April. It is scheduled hopefully mid-April, worst case scenario end of April. My Alexandria 2 review, and the Hossein Ted, and if I mispronounce your username, I'm sorry, they asked, is it a lady killer? I would say yes. I would say Alexandria 2 is a lady killer fragrance, and could also be a man killer fragrance. There's something really sexy. Now you have to like oud, and that is, not everybody likes oud at all. At all, but there's something very approachable and very just attention grabbing and sexy and confident about Alexandria 2. There's also something about it that doesn't smell like every other kind of fruity oud scent. It's mysterious and elevated and really beautiful, so it kind of sets you apart. And so I would definitely say that Alexandria 2 is a lady killer and a man killer. It's a good fragrance. It's a very complimentary, attention-grabbing scent from Xerjoff. That's a great comment. This is on my kind of discovering, or my top 5 fragrances from Fragrance de Bois. And this is from Alma Toledo, and if I mispronounce your username, I'm sorry. And their comment is, do you believe the cannabis parfum is uplifting or relaxing, as in a bedtime scent? I would say it's more uplifting, but if you kind of like those types of fragrances and a cannabis note specifically as calming, I could see it being a good bedtime scent. But for me, like a cannabis note, I find it to be more aromatic, and I find that those types of scents, not that specific fragrance, but just that specific note and that specific style of perfume, for me is more kind of energizing and let's go. Like aromatic scents to me are more like daytime, and for me more nighttime scents are less aromatic, unless it's like lavender. Lavender is like let's go to sleep, or more medicinal kind of aromatherapy lavenders. But to me, like a very strong cannabis note, or the Fragrance de Bois cannabis fragrances, I find to be more uplifting and more daytime or more nighttime, and not so kind of bedtime scents. But I think that depending on your take on that fragrance and your take on that note specifically, it could easily go either way. I could see it being a bedtime scent, but me specifically, I find it to be more of like an uplifting scent than more relaxing. And this last comment comes from Carrie Childress, and if I mispronounce your username, I'm very sorry. And this is on my spring floral fragrance. Their comment is, are all violets powdery? I have so many powdery ones and I'm trying to diversify. No, not all violets are powdery, but I think that powdery violets is just a composition that kind of goes together. I would say if you want a not very powdery violet, try Fragonard's Violette. To me, that's more of kind of like a candy sweet violet. I find that to be less powdery, and Bordeaux's Violette, it's like my nighttime scent. That seems to be lighter and a little bit fresher. I would say try those two. Or look for masculine fragrances that have a violet note. I really like Brioni's, the Eau de Parfum. That is kind of a musky violet fragrance. If you like men's fragrances, if you like those compositions, that one actually has a really nice predominant violet note, but it's not powdery at all. It has a nice kind of musky lightness to it, but it does smell like a men's fragrance. And anyone can wear anything, but I also know that some people prefer the compositions found at the women's fragrance aisle rather than the compositions of fragrances found at the men's fragrance aisle. But if there's like a unisex violet dominant fragrance or a dominant note or a masculine, it's likely to be more aromatic and green and fresh and less powdery if it's unisex or masculine. Generally, the sweeter, powdery types of fragrances are generally more marketed to women. So you might find that if you prefer women's fragrances and powders, you might find mostly sweet, powdery, beautiful violets on there. But if you want to diversify, do that. If you can find Byredo Unnamed, that's a gorgeous one. I think it's discontinued, but sometimes you can find it at gray markets. That's a great one. And again, like Fragonard Violet and Bordeaux's Violet are two really nice ones too. It's just my basic recommendations. But I do know that generally I have a hard time finding a good powdery violet that isn't sweet and feminine leaning. So if you are enjoying sweet violets, you might have a harder time finding one that doesn't have a bit of powder to it. But I would say try Fragonards and Bordeaux's first. Anyway, guys, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And as always, guys, I hope you're all happy and healthy and have a great day, month, year, whatever. And I will see you next time. Bye.